Have a seat, have a seat. Another
Thank
round
you.
of applause for this film. Did you
Thank
enjoy
you.
the film, ladies and gentlemen?
Thank you. I just met Robert for the first time upstairs, and I almost cried when I hugged him, and this is a huge honor for you to be here. Thank you so much. It means the world to me.
Well, thank you so. Well, let me just say this. This is your first movie.
Yeah.
You are a young force of nature. I watched the film, and I laughed, and then it touched my heart, and it's so well written and layered, and your cinematography, the music. So I want to slow everything down. Where do you come from? What planet did you land?
I'm from Tucson, Arizona. I was right after, it's a planet not far away, although it feels very far sometimes. But I was born in Tucson, and then right after I was born, my family moved to Greece for about a year, and then Saudi Arabia for about 5 years. Then we moved back to Arizona when I was about 6. And then I was in Arizona until I was 18.
So talk to me. What fed your spirit to even think about writing, being a filmmaker, creating? Where did that come from?
My mother told me that she knew that I was going to be a writer when I was in 3rd grade because we had a project to write and bind and illustrate our own books, and so she said she'd never seen me more excited to do something than to write this book. And so she said she knew I was going to be a writer from a very young age, but it took me forever because coming from Tucson, my dad's a lawyer, my mother was an educator. For me, I didn't know anybody who made art for a living. I didn't know anybody who created stuff for money. I knew people who played in bar bands on the weekends and people who painted as a hobby, but I didn't know anybody who made art. And it felt like those jobs were for people in New York and Los Angeles and Paris, and that I always knew that I was interested in writing, but it felt like that was going to be something I did on the weekends after I went to law school. So I didn't even really let myself start to think about filmmaking until I was well into my 30s. It was, to me, it always, I didn't even start working in film and television until I was almost 34. I'd been a journalist for about 9 years before that.
What kind of images were you seeing that made you, I want to try to write? What
storytelling was always so. Despite the fact that my parents were professionals and I never knew artists, storytelling was always huge in my house. There was always a movie on. There was always TV on. My parents had season tickets to the theater company in Tucson. It wasn't Broadway, but it was, we got to see great plays every once in a while. And I was the only 7-year-old, I'm sure, in the theater for Do the Right Thing in 1989. There was not a lot of black culture in Tucson, as you might imagine, and so my parents tried to get me into as much black culture as possible. So we were just in the theater for a lot of movies that I probably shouldn't have seen. I saw... still to this day, the most horrific nightmares I've ever had were from this movie, Jacob's Ladder. I don't know if anybody's seen Jacob's Ladder.
Yes.
So I saw Jacob's Ladder when I was about 11 years old. I'm 41, and I still have never been able to watch that movie again because I saw it when I was way too young. But just the rule is that these are stories are good for your brain, and so the rule was that as long as I watched it with them, I could watch it. And so I just grew up with sort of the love of film and TV in a way that, it just permeated everything. And then there was also a lot of music in my house. There was just always a lot of art in the house, despite the fact that I didn't feel like I could be an artist. There was always art around and books.
So when do you decide that you can be an artist? And when do you first pick up the pen to start to write anything?
I started working on my high school newspaper when I was about 17, and then I founded this literary magazine in college, and to me, right after college, I got into journalism, and I was a journalist for about 8 years because journalism to me felt like a way, it was sort of like dipping my toe into being an artist. It was dipping my toe into creativity. It was like, I can write, and this sort of fulfills me creatively in a way, but also it feels professional. My parents understand this. I was a White House reporter for a little bit. My parents understood. I'm going to the White House to sit on this press conference with Barack Obama. Then it's oh, I understand. That's what got my dad to stop asking me to go to law school. He was okay, this seems like you're finally, because it's at a certain point it went from his pleas to go to law school to just be can you just join the Peace Corps or something? Like, just do something that gives your life direction. And I just kept putting it off and putting it off and putting it off. And then finally, when, my journalism career started taking off enough that I was doing things that, saw my byline more places, and I was going to the White House. And so it felt like, okay, I'm in between these two worlds of like satisfying sort of like this life of a professional that makes sense to me and makes sense to my family and the people who love me, while also being allowed to be creative a little bit. And I probably would have still been doing that right now had it not been for one day this guy named Mike O'Malley, who's this writer and producer and actor. He had seen some of my journalism and just asked me to come work in a writer's room in 2014. So he wrote to me out of the blue and said, I've read some of your work and I think that you're funny and I'd be interested.
But it was like articles?
Yeah. It was, it was a piece of satire actually. So the thing that put me on his radar was back in like 2013, there had been this surf competition in Huntington Beach. And after the surf competition, all of these teenagers had gone and like destroyed Huntington Beach and sort of like smashed out windows, and they were like looting stores and getting fights in the streets and just tearing apart this town. And they were, it was a bunch of sort of like surf teenagers who were predominantly white in this sort of like small, like normally peaceful seaside town. And so I wrote this article about like, where are the white parents to take care of these like unruly white youth who are like smashing apart this town and looting stuff. And I was like, it's clearly because they're listening to like all this anti-authoritarian punk music that's sort of like convincing them to sort of like lose their minds. And it's like, they're learning dangerous things at like lacrosse camp, and sort of like they're being like, they're just like learning to be violent young kids. And so, the exact same thing that like Bill O'Reilly would say if these were like black teenagers doing this, the thing that Bill O'Reilly would say on Fox News. And so
Mike read that.
Mike read that. Well, also I did the next day they had me come on MSNBC, and I was on Chris Hayes, where we did like a fake Fox News thing where I sort of, where he was like, well, we need to talk about these unruly white children. And I was like, yeah, man, it's a real big problem. Like, it's like horse racing in fields. They're losing their minds. They're getting too drunk at frat parties. So we did that on TV, and that's what Mike originally saw. So Mike saw that video, and then he went and read some of my stuff, and he said, I have no idea if you'll be good at this, but let's try it out. It's an experiment. Come work on the show.
So let me ask you a question. So then all of a sudden you do this turn. You leave journalism and you get in the writer's room, and then the writer's room shifts your brain that you go, I could do this for real.
Yeah, writing up until that point had been such a solitary exercise for me. It was just literally me in a room with my computer and sort of an editor. And other than that, it was always just, there would be days that I would go just not having talked to anybody because I'm just sort of sitting there writing by myself. And so getting into that room and collaborating not just with other writers, but also directors and actors and costume designers, and that just sort of like really fed me in a way that I hadn't been fed before. And it just felt really nice. And I really liked that all of a sudden, like, this thing that I'd been doing, that I thought was a lonely thing was like this collaborative thing, and that actually you can do it with dozens of other people, and like, in fact, like the work becomes sort of like bigger and stronger because of sort of like the help of all these people. It felt like, I still really love journalism. I still love writing prose, but it just felt like, I found like the new chapter. That's what it felt like.
So let's get to the movie. So it's based on a book. Mm-hmm. So talk to me about the day you read the book, who gave you the book, or you just found the book, and just give me the journey.
So I'd had a terrible 2020, as I know that everybody had a terrible 2020. If you had a good 2020, I think that's weird. But I had a terrible 2020, for the obvious reasons, but also I'd had this huge professional failure where I was really, really, really close to getting a TV show on the air that I'd created, and at the last minute, it was killed. And it was very devastating to me, and so I was in a funk around December of 2020, and I was reading this review for this book called Interior Chinatown, which they're adapting for Hulu right now, I think. And in the review for Interior Chinatown, it said that this book has a satire reminiscent of Percival Everett's Erasure. And I'd never heard of Erasure, so I went out and bought it. And it was, I don't know if you've ever had this experience, but it felt like it was written specifically for me. Like it felt like somebody sat down to write me a gift. Like it was like within 20 pages, I was like, oh, I think I might want to adapt this into a script. And then within 50 pages, I was like, I definitely want to adapt this into a script, and maybe I want to direct this. And then
This is all during the first read?
yeah, instantly. Like it was like, because it was not just, now that people have seen the movie, I can talk about without spoiling stuff, but it wasn't just the sort of like the professional themes of like what it means to be a black creative and sort of like the limitations that people put on black life. Like that stuff was there, but it was also, I have two siblings. We have a sort of like overbearing father figure that looms very large in our life. Like my mother didn't die of dementia, but my mother died of cancer 8 years ago, and sort of like one of my older brother was the one living in our hometown and shouldering the responsibility of taking her to her treatments and shopping for her, and while my other brother and I were off kind of gallivanting around the world doing our own thing. And then during the last month of my mother's life, I moved home to take care of her while she was in hospice care. There was just all of these kind of overlaps in my personal and professional life that just felt like it started to feel a little weird. Like I also went to this very small school called William and Mary in Virginia for college, and there's like a William and Mary reference. There was just all this weird. It was also set in L.A. and D.C. I moved it from D.C. to Boston, and I lived in D.C. and I lived in L.A. It just felt like there was just so much in the book that intersected with my life that it just felt like it was one of those things where every time I set the book down, I just felt it like calling me in my head, like come back and finish this.
So once you read the book, how long was the time between, like, when did you take action? You read the book and then you go like, I could do this, and then all of a sudden, what happens next?
It was instantaneous. I was frustrated because it was still Christmas, it was still the holidays, and I was frustrated that people were out of the office, because like that's how instantaneously I wanted. I was like, let's go talk to the author on like December 27th, and everybody was like, well, we got to wait until the new year. And so I was just like pacing around my house waiting for the second that we could send an email to Percival Everett to ask him for the rights. And so they emailed Percival. We went through my manager to his agent, and Percival asked to speak to me on the phone, and we talked for about a half an hour. And Percival, the most gracious, generous guy in the world, he gave me the rights for free for 6 months, and he said, just go write a script, and if you write something and you sell it, then we can talk about paying me. Like Percival, I've never met somebody like Percival. Like he truly just doesn't care about money. He doesn't care about fame, and I think it's sort of, in many ways, he sort of like rejects that stuff intentionally, and he just could hear. I think he could just hear the passion in my voice. Like I just said, like I wasn't coming to this for any other reason than like I love this, and it speaks to me deeper than any piece of art has ever spoken to me. And so he just gave me the rights for free.
Wow. So you know what? They gave me the sign. It's like 5 minutes. So I want to go through a lightning round with you, because I need all 5 minutes. Are you with me, ladies and gentlemen? Quick answers, fast answers. Okay. So how you adapted it from the book. How different is the movie from the book?
I would say there's about 2/3 of the movie at least are new stuff.
2/3.
Yes.
Give me give me 3 examples.
In the book, his sister is murdered. In the book, his father has a secret family that Monk goes and visits, and also in the book, one of my favorite scenes in the film is not in the book. It's the scene with Sintara and Monk having their sort of like ideological conversation about what good black art is. That's not in the novel.
So that came from you?
That came from me.
Casting. How did you come up with this cast?
Like I said, I started reading the book in Jeffrey Wright's voice. So he was
so good in this movie, man.
He's amazing.
He has never been. Let me say this to you. How you handled the cast was just lovely. There's amazing performances through everybody. What did you learn about? Had you directed, television before or anything? This
never
is the first thing you ever directed
before. Yeah, I never directed anything before.
Wow. And so were you a little like, that's Jeffrey Wright over there?
Yeah, I was terrified. Yeah. The first day was a really, really rough day, because I felt like directing Jeffrey Wright is like telling Michael Jordan how to do a jump shot. Like I was like, I can't do that. Like he's good. Let him cook. He's good. And sort of like once I got past that initial fear, Jeffrey and I had a really great rapport, and I realized that it was like, the reason that these people are great actors isn't because they sort of like they're collaborative in spite of their success. It's like, no, they're successful because they are collaborative.
But the only thing I would say, like, even with Michael Jordan, he needed Phil Jackson.
Yeah.
He still needed a coach.
Yeah.
You know, because there's so many players, you know what I mean? So,
Yeah.
you know, you pulled out great performances. Talk to me about the music. I love the jazz. I love the music.
Laura Cardman.
Where's Laura?
Laura Cardman up there. Laura Cardman.
Give her, turn the lights on.
Laura Cardman. All credit to Laura Cardman. She came in. We instantly had a great rapport. I told her I really was thinking of jazz, and she came in and already had a bunch of tremendous ideas, and she was just a wonderful collaborator.
Wow, wow. Okay, this is going to be the final question because they're giving me that wrap-up thing, and we're getting close. Now, she's over there in that hat shaking. That's my cue. She was like, when you see me shaking, Robert, it means we got to wrap up. How has this journey been thus far for you? Is it what you expected when you took on this? Because I love the film. People are loving the film. You know, what has this journey been like for you?
It's been very, very, very overwhelming in the best way possible. You know, as you know, and as everybody in here probably knows, like, making stuff and putting it into the world is a vulnerable experience, and it's, you know, especially when it's a work that's as personal to me as this is, and that's scary. And I was proud of the film, and I liked it. And, you know, when you put it out in the world, I just watched an interview with this is humiliating. John Waters the other day, who I'm a big fan of, and John Waters said that one of the things to remember about filmmaking is that you need more people to like it than your mother and the person you're fucking. and so,
well, I think you're doing fine, man. You're doing fine.
So I just hope that more people would like it than that, and you know, the response has just been overwhelming. I said it at the top, like, making this movie was the greatest honor of my life, and I think that, you know, I think that happiness has been elusive for me over the years, and I think this is the first year that I've started to. Actually, I started really thinking, like, a month ago, like, are you happy? Is this what happiness feels like? And I think that maybe I am, because I think that I've found this creative community. I found people who like to talk about movies and watch movies and like to talk about art. And I get to meet, like, people like you, heroes of mine, who like really, like, I just want to say before we wrap up, like, I don't believe that I'm sitting here unless when I'm like 8 years old, I see Hollywood Shuffle as a little boy in Tucson, Arizona, and, like, really, really, because it was I truly think it was the first movie where I was like, I don't think I understood what the word satire was yet, but what I did understand was, like, oh, these guys are talking about something serious to them. They're like, racism is serious to them, and it's seriously affecting their life, but they aren't self-serious about it, and sort of like they're finding a way to laugh. And I think that it's not like they're finding a way to laugh in spite of it. It's like they are finding a way to laugh because of it, because sort of like if you don't find a way to laugh in sort of like tragic circumstances and difficult times, then, like, you've really lost, right? Like, I think that to me was a revelation to me, and it really spoke to me in a way that other art did not speak to me back then. So this is, like, literally a dream come true. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you. So let me say this, because we got to wrap up real quick. So let me say back at you. Sometimes I hate to go to premieres because afterwards, you know, if the movie is not good, they get you, Robert, what do you think? You know, and it's like, it was in focus, you know. Watching your movie just, you know, it touched my heart. And it's kind of like, you know, when you plant a seed, you hope other seeds will sprout up and have the same kind of integrity and layers in their writing, and you have that. So when I was watching your film, I go, we love everybody, but sometimes we've got to point out injustices. And so when I was watching the film, it's such a beautiful canvas, and even between Myra and Maynard, there, you know, that whole relationship between them, I was like, you know, of their age, I mean, of my age, I was like, because I didn't know if I could still have sex. So I was like, thank you. So I just want to say, with all jokes aside, though, I am so proud of you, beyond proud of you, how you handle yourself, creating a piece of art. You have a big future ahead of you, and I love you, my brother. Mr. Cord Jefferson!
Thank you.